So I'll just take you around really, and it's not as hierarchical as it looks, but we thought that, let's start down here. I think it probably makes more sense to the first one we put down, sort of people. So we've just put down different groups of people: academic staff, administrative staff, student services, corporate staff, learning support students, and it's probably still a partial list. You can see that we have a relationship here that says stakeholder engagement through to program teams. Now, it could be that some of these people are actually part of the program team, but nonetheless, program teams probably have some other responsibilities as well, and we'll talk about such things as workload, time, the context in which they work, their understanding of the quality processes, and their skill as it relates to their ability to actually undertake curriculum design. So we've got some learning and teaching support here and some staff development that would tie in with trying to bolster some of that skill. Got this big one down here of culture change. Doesn't say anything else after it. I mean, it could go, but it's certainly something that you're getting into bed with. In terms of, we spent a long time trying to think of the right word. So this one, governance, is about sort of committee structures, quality matters, and the way in which the mechanisms through which the university, I suppose, exercises some of its influence, power and control around such things as standards and the way things are done. But we weren't necessarily clear that this relationship between program teams and their understanding between governance, whether that was entirely fully understood by program teams about how things worked, and that the relationship and support wasn't clear, and that whether those who enacted the governance frameworks saw themselves as being service orientated, in a way that we could say that central ICT departments, for all their foibles, are probably quite good at seeing themselves as a service department. We're here to deliver the core business. Whereas there's a question that whether those who hold the keys to the academic processes would see themselves as being a service department rather than something else that's about issuing edicts. And certainly in our institution, we're moving from, and actually that edicts is about perception, isn't it? Because sometimes program teams think they're edicts, and actually they're not edicts. They're just kind of suggestions and guidance, and at some point it filters down. It becomes an absolute policy that must be adhered to, when it was only ever guidance. I think that's that side. Oh, software systems. We started to talk about systems and all sorts of systems. We wanted to make this is a different font size because it really needs to be a different order out here. But we thought we could say software systems about feral, and that we will find feral in some other places here. But there were those systems that people just use on their own that aren't really set up by the institution. So faculty support, faculty school autonomy, such things as program information repositories, and about that versions of the truth that I think it speaks to there. But there are other systems that are kind of enterprise or corporate systems relating to student record systems, finance systems, program information repositories, which you can see is duplicated here, timetabling systems. Marketing may have their own systems in terms of managing courses and being able to push out for things like course discovery and things. We've got some other stuff over there about course discovery, but there's the whole thing about non-credit bearing short courses and so forth. So that's that half. Over here we've got some stuff around program information, and so we started thinking about the documentary products that come out of curriculum designs, things like student handbooks, prospectuses, module catalogues, program specifications, and the stuff that might relate to course discovery and how that gets passed to agencies such as UCAS. We also thought that curriculum design, we mustn't forget that kind of redesign and ongoing iteration of programs fast becomes the thing that emerges as being almost a major element of what goes on. So we've talked about review and minor change, but this thing about minor changes, accumulated effect, and at what point does that accumulated effect mean that actually you've ended up with something new as opposed to what was reviewed? And it should prompt a review when you get to the point that you've actually in new course, but where does that sit? Who makes that decision, and how is that picked up? And we didn't really have any answers for that. This curriculum delivery in a triangle, it looks different, and we put it in a triangle just because we think the way that you deliver curriculum has an impact on the way that you might design it. The two things are interlinked. We didn't really, again, we could have expanded that out. And we tried to think about what some of the drivers and considerations that are behind curriculum design. We thought there were some external considerations and some internal considerations. Those external considerations will be things like hefty funding rules, QAA requirements, market forces, needs of employers, needs of professional bodies, and that those external considerations are likely to inform policy, and that policy may in turn then inform internal considerations about processes, internal politics and territorial stuff, business, philosophical cases. Again, we see feral processes up here about how people locally will start to work through who you know and those sort of ways of working. But that notion that actually, if this is the things that people really do, what you know is that those processes are stakeholder informed because they've grown out of the real life stuff and the lived experience of it, and perhaps we should think about how we can systematize the feral processes rather than trying to systematize around feral processes, because you probably wouldn't destroy them, nor would you want to. They may have value. There's a whole thing about infrastructure where we didn't go, but some of the things that we've been talking about sort of SharePoint infrastructures, even things like what's your accommodation infrastructure and so forth, has an impact on how you might approach curriculum design, who you've got to talk to. And then all that stuff about strategic planning that schools or faculties get involved in, business cases, academic cases, and how curriculum design may touch or need to reflect or respect schools' strategic plans.